Cellar System, Cradle of Celia, War Council Chambers, mid-2670, Vorta Volkala, War Council Chambers Clerk. Vorta, Vorta! Vorta Volkala! A voice rang out from across the table where she sat. Her mind snapped to reality, and she met the eyes of the one who called to her. It was her longtime friend and colleague, Talani. Yes? Did you even hear what I said? Her tonal inflections gave Vorta a sense of frustration. Her friend spoke in a floaty manner that made it seem like she was talking to an infant. She knew Talani did so unironically, and that was just her natural speech pattern. Both sat in a large room that was dedicated for the consumption and disposal of food in a wing of the War Council chambers. Both served as clerks at the reception desks and had seen all manner of individuals enter and leave. "No, sorry, I was just thinking," Vorta replied, her answer seeming unsatisfied to her friend. "Well, like I was saying, something big is going on and some of the guards won't tell me, no matter how much I put out." "Are they supposed to tell you?" Vorta replied, taking a bite out of a sandwich she had made from home. "Well, no, but I'm cute. How could they not tell me? Is there something on my face?" "Tola, you can only get away with your appearance for so long before you finally meet someone who won't take to your advances." "But you never learn." Vorta shook her head in a dismissive manner, irking Talani. "No way," she said, as if in shock. "Is my headdress not in style?" Talani replied, clearing missing the mark and pointing to her silver headdress ornament, with the central piece in the form of an elaborate star with an emerald-coloured jewel placed in the centre. "You think if I keep pulling them aside, they'll tell me?" After several bouts of invalidation towards her colleague and friend, Vorta returned to work. She sat at her desk that faced the main entrances. There were large planes of glass that gave a wide arc of view beyond the compound walls and to the surrounding buildings that towered over it beyond the street. However, her view was overtaken by the constant view of soldiers lifting and moving pieces of military equipment from a truck that had entered at the gate. From what some of the troops had told her, amid their attempts to court her, was that they were reinforcing much of the walls and windows with bags of dirt laid on top of each other, supposedly to stop oncoming rounds from enemy weapons and shrapnel. Other than that, all she could really think about was her slowly diminishing view. What was once a sight of birds, flowers, and sky was now reduced to olive-coloured bags of leaking dirt that stained the glass at around the average height of the troopers. "At least I still have the sky," she thought to herself. She would continue her work, managing some paperwork, or directing higher appointed officials on where they needed to go and who was awaiting them. As of late, there were more military personnel than there were political. Some would be escorted by their own band of guards, much of whom donned the same outfit as those of the main army, but had differently coloured suits of armour. That was how their army was divided, those who are the general force and those who make up privatised bands, much like the late War Chief Commander Brallo. Of all the chiefs she had met in her work, he was the one she had adored the most. Kind, strong, and most notably, tall. When news came of his demise, she was crestfallen and had taken a couple of days out of work to mourn. As word had it, they were unable to provide a body, and so it was a closed casket funeral after the campaign fleet had returned, with much fewer ships than before. It wasn't official, but word was starting to get around that she and Brallo were an item, something she was hoping to come to pass when they got back. Now she did her work in quiet efficiency, letting the time pass each day as more and more reinforcements were added to the building. When she would enter through the main gate each morning, there would always be another automated turret, tent, or band of troops within the perimeter, and she would continue her work at her desk indefinitely. More time would pass since the troops stopped adding the chamber's defences, and during that time they would take what time they had to speak to either her or Talani. Vorta would deny their advances, and Talani would disappear with them, only to come back dishevelled. However, as of late, she had been seeing Talani with Councilman Polas as he would go about his business. From what she had seen, he wasn't bothered by it, but rather feigned annoyance at her presence, but kept her with him until they were out of sight. Vorta lost count to how many her friend has been with in the last several weeks and stopped counting after the 20th occasion. During one morning after she had set up her space, she would eavesdrop on 2 guards nearby having a conversation that she was barely able to make out. She would slowly and quietly slide her chair closer to them until she could make out full sentences. "Did you hear? Apparently they began evacuations on the outskirt towns." "Really? Don't you think it's a bit early for that?" The other shrugged, denying its confirmation. "I don't know, man. With what I've heard, the Terrans had already broken through Belladere and Dawn. Nothing left on Belladere, and apparently the Scientist Coalition on Dawn were taken as prisoner. Didn't they have a defense system? I heard they could hold off the Chief General fleet with those defenses. That doesn't make sense to me how they got captured. Something ain't right. You think that's bad? Get this, the troops under Brallo were some of the finest Celia had to offer, but all of them got wiped out. Even Brallo himself." His fellow trooper was shocked at the revelation. "No way. The Brallo." "How did you not hear? They held a procession for the fallen soldiers of the campaign fleet got back. How did you not hear?" The other raised his hands in defense, palms out. "I don't know. I was out with the wife at our kids' tournament. Of course I'm not going to go." "Fine, but apparently for a lot of them, it was closed casket style. They couldn't come back with the bodies. You know who killed them?" "You didn't hear this from me," he replied, and leaned in to try to lower his tone, but spoke to where Vorta could barely make out what they said. "Apparently they rained down from the sky in metal shaped like tears or raindrops. Crashed down and slaughtered his troops." The other was fearful, and Vorta understood as well. Brallo was well known among the troopers, and even among the civilians of his achievements, as one of, if not, the best ground troops commander of their time. If the enemy could effortlessly take out their best infantry commander, then they were a group to be rightfully feared. As they were about to continue their conversation, a guard came through the front doors and addressed the two. "Jarlin, Erlo! Get back on patrol, or fathers help me. I'll send you to guard the War Council's sanctum." "Yes, War Chief," sounded the two. "I ain't trying to be food for those scaly freaks," added Jarlin, nudging Erlo in the shoulder as they hastily left. The War Chief, who remained, stood by until the two cleared the entrance into the main courtyard, until they were cleared of Vorta's view. The War Chief turned to Vorta with a menacing glare, but she knew to already have her head down as she loudly shuffled some papers and data pads, feigning actual work until he left. She sighed and noticed that her desk was still empty, with Talani nowhere in sight. Last she had seen, she left with Councilman Paulus just after work had started. It was near closing, and she had yet to see her and Paulus leave from the inner sanctum wing. She wasn't authorized to go back there, as she was instructed by the chief clerk several weeks ago. Vorta had chalked it up to Talani spending quality time with Paulus, probably trying to guarantee some form of safety should the Terrans make it to their cradle world. At the end of the day she would leave for her home, which was only a 5-minute walk to the front gate and was situated underground as an emergency bunker. She moved there shortly after the campaign fleet's return, and had stayed there ever since. She had stayed late waiting for Talani, but when she didn't appear, she left, hoping to see her tomorrow. However, as she slept, unbeknownst to Vorta, a battle waged in orbit and projectiles from the planet were sent into orbit, colliding with an enemy or missing their mark entirely. Of course, she would be made aware as she came in to work the next day, but to her surprise, she was denied access and turned away at the gate. All the while the plumes of smoke and streaks of light rose from the horizon towards the sky. She would depart towards her home where both she and Talani lived. Vorta would remain in her shoddy bunker, awaiting the only other soul who lived in it. However, Talani would never return.